Second reason for leaving was this. I found in the official Christian music industry, you are very limited with regards to what you can talk about and how you can talk about them. And I say official because in recent years, it's sort of like a subculture growing that's kind of removed from the formalized institution, but I'll talk more about that later. But at the time when I was trying to make Christian music, this subculture did not exist, right? There wasn't really anything like that. And so in the official industry, it was very difficult to talk about a breadth of subjects. You always had to be preaching, like the style may change, whether it's Christian contemporary or black gospel or Christian hip hop. But for a time, the content was quite limited. And if you crossed that boundary, you would face major backlash or at least some major resistance. I mean, ask Lecrae what happened when he started talking about social issues. That nigga got dragged by the church. So you are very limited in the official industry. And that's because in the Christian music industry, there's the prototypical archetype of the main consumer, the soccer mom. And if you think this is a trope, if you think I'm saying this as a pejorative, I am not. I promise you. In the marketing departments of the Christian record labels and companies, there are literal consumer profiles that are developed where there are literal archetypes of the different types of consumers. And for popular Christian music, the main consumer is the soccer mom who has the minivan, is packing their kids in it, is taking them to practice or youth group, and doesn't want to have to think about what's playing on the radio. So I get it. And so a part of me empathizes with this, and another part of me just kind of think it sucks, to be honest. And so because of this, those operating in the official Christian music industry are very limited with regard to what they can sing or rap about. So much so that I would go so far as to say that the Christian industry tends to put more restrictions on Christian artists than even the Bible puts on Christian artists. Let me explain. For Christian artists in the Christian industry, there seems to be this expectation that every song is supposed to be vertical, meaning that like you're supposed to always be talking about God or talking to God or evangelizing about God or talking explicitly about the gospel, when in reality, that is just not how we go about our lives. Like we are not always all the time only ever preaching the gospel. Like we go through everyday life. Like yes, that's the heart of what we believe, but we go through everyday life. We go through everyday situations. We all like music that speaks to that. Christians like music that speaks to their experiences. And yet I find it very puzzling that it seems like for the average Christian music listener who puts these high standards on Christian artists, when they want worship music, they'll go to the Christian artist. But when they want music that chronicles the rest of their life experiences, many would rather go to a mainstream artist who is not a Christian than have a Christian artist speak about these experiences through a biblical worldview. Like it's the strangest thing to me. It's like they're saying, I'm a Christian and I want music that speaks to my everyday experiences.
Like, hey, Christian artists, you are not allowed to make music about them. I want to hear about my life from other musicians who don't necessarily share my worldview.
You see how backwards that is? And I'm not making this up, I promise. Many Christian artists have faced major backlash from within the Christian community because they steered away from the required JPM counts in their songs, the Jesus per minute counts. It's kind of like an inside joke in the Christian community. And what makes this restrictiveness even weirder is the fact that the Bible itself does not put as many restrictions on the Christian artists. This is what I mean. If you look at all of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, from front to back, it is very clear that the overall theme of the Bible is about Jesus. It's about God sending Jesus into the world to rescue us from our sins. This is the overarching narrative of the Bible. It's pretty clear. But when you zoom in and you go verse by verse, chapter by chapter, or even book by book, not every single page is only ever preaching this message. Some parts of the Bible are pure history. Like this one grew up here and married this one. This king went to war with this other one. This person killed this other person. And this one ruled this area for this period of time and then was succeeded by this other person. And then this one betrayed this other person and so on and so forth. Like it's literally telling you history. And then there are other parts of the Bible that are poetry, beautiful poetry, sometimes pretty graphic poetry. And it's expounding on love and sex and desire and things like that. And then there are other parts of the Bible like the Psalms, and it's King David laying out his heart and his pain and his struggle and his hope. And yes, some parts of the Bible are theology, like the letters of Paul, for example, where he's just unpacking the Christian idea. Like this is the Christian message, these are the tenets, these are the principles of the Christian faith, aka what Christians call the explicit gospel. Like the Bible covers it all, the message and the messiness of life in light of the message. But in all of the different passages, there are different genres. So when you go in detail, each and every single chapter doesn't only ever talk about the gospel message, but holistically, the message is about Jesus. So when I think about this, I ask myself, if God himself in his scriptures allows for a multiplicity of narratives, all informed through his lens, if he allows for that to happen, then why do we put such a heavy and unnecessary restriction on Christian artists? Restrictions that say you cannot talk about all of the affairs of life unless you are explicitly in every single song preaching the gospel message at the end of it. That, my friend, is just not life. That is not even how the scriptures bear out. So the way I like to think of the Christian artist's life is this. Like the Bible, overwhelmingly, when we look at the full scope of your life, from your songs to your albums to your tweets to your posts to your interviews, we should get a sense that you are a Christian over a period of time at least. If you're a Christian and nobody can ever tell after years of listening to you and watching you and following you, there's probably something else going on there. That said, even though the holistic message should be one of an individual who has faith, that does not mean that every single song, album, tweet, post, interview has to be explicitly Christian. It just doesn't. And so I found that I was very limited in the Christian industry with regard to what I could talk about. Otherwise, my audience would begin to give me a side eye, or all of a sudden the churches that I used to perform at would no longer invite me. Why? Because they were looking for Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus is great. And Jesus is great, right? And that music is okay. It has its place. But something begins to happen, especially as you grow and mature. As I began to have more life experiences, I found that the things I wanted to talk about when I got married, when I had kids, or when I started building a business began to change. It broadened. I was no longer the 20-year-old guy who was fresh to the faith and was just all about preaching the gospel and evangelizing my university campus. I began to experience new things. I had long-term friendships that came to an end. I had a close friend of mine die. She was like a sister to me. My parents got divorced. My wife had a miscarriage. I had financial difficulties. I had financial successes. I have goals. I have ambitions. All of these experiences were new to me, and I wanted to talk about them as honestly and as transparently as I possibly could. I mean, music is therapy, and I wanted to talk about my life plainly, but of course still informed by my Christian worldview. But it doesn't mean that every single song was going to have a neat little gospel message at the end of it. And I just found that this was very difficult to do in the Christian industry. And so I had to expand out of it.